Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome to the back of the range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 119. As you can imagine, it's been quite the special week here at the back of the range. I've received so many kind messages and positive feedback from last week's episode. If you missed it, I hope you get a chance to listen to it. It's in Apple Podcasts. My guest was Jack Nicklaus. Tried to ask him some questions that he hasn't heard in his nearly 60-year professional career. I might have gotten a couple good ones in there, but still, an incredible experience to spend a morning in Jack's office and something that I will never forget. Before we move on to this week's episode, you might want to pop over to our social media channels because I'm posting some video clips that were shot during the Nicklaus episode. Kind of gives you an idea of some of the things we discussed. So again, head over to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes of this episode. Simple way to find everything, you guessed it, go to the website, thebackoftherange.com. Lots of Mojo updates to get to and a few announcements, so here they come in no particular order. I am getting back on the horse and getting the free Towel Tuesdays posted for you. I have to admit, been a little bit preoccupied with getting some episodes recorded, but that's changing because I'm going to give these towels away every single week to all the listeners. So follow along on social media, watch for posts on Tuesdays, leave some comments, tag some friends, really just trying to get some conversation started. I will reward you and send you a towel so you can rock that on your golf bag. 2 major college golf tournaments just wrapped up earlier this week, Southern Highlands Collegiate in Las Vegas and the Cabo Collegiate in Mexico. The top 10 teams from each tournament all have a legitimate shot at the national championship later this spring. There are only a handful of spring tournaments left before the conference championships, then the NCAA regionals, and then, of course, the national championship. So, at Southern Highlands, the team title went to USC as they edged out Texas by 2. As far as the individual title, in sudden death, Parker Cootie picked up the win over Yushin Lin. Lots of guys in the top 10 are also friends of the podcast. So nice to see Devin Bling from UCLA, Ricky Castillo from UF, all playing well. Down in Cabo, the team title went to Arizona State as all 5 of their players finished in the top 15. Individual title went to Walker Lee of Texas A&M. Lots of teams playing well late into this season. So keep an eye on college golf. As you all know, I'm going to be heading over to the Valspar Collegiate in a couple weeks at the Floridian. Going to see some of the Walker Cuppers that I spent the week with last year at Royal Liverpool. Definitely looking forward to that experience. Congrats to 2 former guests that just got named to the 2020 Arnold Palmer Cup team. As I said, Ricky Castillo from Florida, John Pock from FSU. Both were featured on the Road to Hoylake Series last year, so go check that out. John Pock went undefeated at the Walker Cup and helped the Americans in their come-from-behind victory. I have not spoken with John yet. I'm not sure whether or not he needs me to come to Ireland in July for the Arnold Palmer Cup. It's going to be held at Lahinch. That will be awesome to watch, so congrats to those guys. Can't wait to see what that team's actually going to look like. And finally, the Road to Augusta series is going to kick off next week. We're basically just a month away from the Masters. I want to make sure that all of those episodes are released before the start of the tournament so that you can learn more about the 6 amateurs that are going to be playing in the 2020 Masters. Before we get too entrenched with this youth movement, let's get to this week's episode and introduce you to another Mid-Am that competes nationally and has been playing great golf in the state of Missouri for, well, his entire life. Our guest this week is Brad Nurski from St. Joe, Missouri. Brad has won the Missouri Amateur and Mid-Amateur numerous times, and along with Skip Berkmeyer, you know, those 2 guys are basically the dominant amateurs in the state for the last 20 years. They've partnered up to play USGA state team and U.S. 4-balls together. Brad was also the runner-up in the 2014 U.S. Mid-Am that was won by Scott Harvey. I think y'all remember that episode. So Brad and I had a great conversation. He even threw a little bit of friendly shade over at Skip Berkmeyer. Love that. Let's get straight to this episode. Brad, you're at the back of the range. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I've had a lot of Missouri boys on this podcast. You know, Berkmeyer's been on and Holtgreave's been on, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones that I still have had on or need to get to in the future, but definitely wanted to talk to you. You know, it's not common that I run across a player, a Mid-Am player that kind of stays in their own hometown. And I just, every time I'm looking at your accomplishments, it always has St. Joseph, Missouri attached to it. And that's been your hometown, and that's where you're living to this day. So before we get started with a lot of the Mid-Am things that you've accomplished and even your professional aspirations in the early 2000s, tell me something about St. Joseph people don't know.
To be on the funny side, real quick, it's kind of where the Pony Express started and Jesse James ended. To be honest with you,
Okay.
And I grew up here all my life since I was born here, and I went to high school and college here, and I've always liked the smaller city setting, I guess you could say, and I've been to some bigger cities in my day, and I've always seemed like the community here is a little more tight knit, and you get a lot more people rooting for you, I guess you should say, and everyone enjoys to watch somebody from a smaller town succeed.
Sure. So how did you get into, were you one of those kids that's like, okay, I just play golf and that's just my one sport, or were you just into everything as a kid? Because I think we see a lot of that today where kids get specialized really quick. When I grew up, I think you and I are probably around the same age, early 40s. And
Yeah.
I remember just playing everything. I mean, basketball, soccer, baseball, golf, tennis. I played everything. Did you play everything as a kid?
Yeah, I did. I did not play football, but my dad started me pretty early playing baseball, and I played baseball all the way through my 8th grade year. And my dad said, essentially, you're gonna have to make a decision on what sport you want to play, because they're in the same season here in Missouri.
Yeah.
Baseball and golf are, and so I chose golf, and luckily that seemed to have worked out. And I also played basketball. I played basketball in high school. I couldn't shoot, but our coach let me play just because I was fast and I would play defense. But yeah, I wasn't the greatest basketball player, so luckily I stuck with golf.
Yeah, I didn't play football either, but I could still rack up injuries and just nagging things without having to play football. So I got that going for me. So you start playing golf. I know that you were all region, Benton High School, just basically dominated there. I know you won a lot of tournaments, and then moved on for college, moved to Missouri Western State, which is in St. Joe. So most everyone I talk to does the, acclimating to the college experience, bigger campus, meeting different people. What was it like going from high school to college really in the same city? Did it just feel like an extension of high school, or how much different was it?
It was a little different, but it wasn't too terrible for me. Like you said, it was an extension of high school for me, really, because I knew a lot of the professors there. Didn't really get recruited to go anywhere else. Maybe Central Missouri State. I think they offered me maybe a half a scholarship or so, but it turned out that the guy I was working for at the public golf course there, he was the head golf coach at Missouri Western, and he essentially recruited me to Missouri Western, and I didn't really want to go anywhere else, to be truthful.
All right, so tell me about college life at Missouri at Missouri Western, because I spent time at the University of Kansas. I've spent time in the Midwest, but talk to me about college life when you're so attached to the city you grew up in.
You kind of show everyone around, and you kind of get everyone acclimated to what's going on in your town, and you're kind of like the liaison for people when they come in, and you get to that's kind of the fun part for me, was showing all my new golf buddies or my new teammates that they're, just because it's a little town doesn't mean that it doesn't have something to offer. And
sure.
And there was plenty of job opportunities here in St. Joe for life after college, and a lot of people move on from college here, but they always seem to come back, and just because I believe it's the tight-knit community around here, and everyone kind of rallies behind the college, especially when it's a smaller college.
Now, I'm thinking about all the trouble I got into when I was at KU, because I was away from, parents, and all of a sudden, grabbing beers when you probably shouldn't. It was really easy
Oh,
to
yeah.
do. So I hate to go in a dark direction right away and throw you completely under the bus, but let's go back. Some of these buddies that you would catch up with, or some of these friends that you welcomed into St. Joe's. What's the fun part, or what was one of the ways that you guys got in trouble when you were in college? I mean,
No,
not too much trouble. We're not talking about boosting a car here. I mean, we're just
no, yeah.
go easy. It's PG-13. But how do tell me about the weekends in Missouri, at school. You're playing on the college golf team. You had tremendous success on the team. Walk me through just a typical dumb college weekend.
If it was during a school season, we would do our things on a weekend, and we'd probably start on the golf course, and by the time we turned 21, we'd find a beer or two, and then we'd probably hop to a local bar, or and then find ourselves in a few situations that we probably shouldn't be in, and maybe had to talk our way out of a few things. But that's, again, being in a tight-knit community, a few people to get you out of some things.
Yeah, and also everyone knows what's going on. So that is so your coach that recruits you, Mike Habermill. Now this is still your swing coach to this day. Is that right?
Yeah, yep. And he's been with me since essentially day one.
Wow. So I mean, are we talking like junior golf? He was your coach, or are we talking about just in Missouri?
Oh yeah, junior golf. I mean, when I first started, probably 8 or 9 years old, he's had me ever since, and I've never had anyone else to this day. So other than my dad,
Sure.
helping me with a few things here and there, but it got to the point where the dad couldn't really take it to the next level, and so Mike is always there for me, and he to this day he actually just retired last Monday. So that's we'll see how that works out for him and I. But
yeah, you might need to go drag him out on the range as needed. So I don't think he's going to be officially retired ever, probably with you. But
no, I mean, I think he's been in the golf business over 30 years, and it's time for him to take a little step back and enjoy life and enjoy his family, and actually get to play some golf for once, and enjoy the rest of his life there.
Nice. Normally when we talk about juniors or even on the PGA Tour, you're in high-level amateurs, everyone seems to always be finding a new swing coach or taking a new tip from some instructor that maybe only teaches online, and just bouncing around and getting all sorts of different input and ideas and swing theories. And you're working with a guy basically for your entire life, and obviously it's benefited you. You've reached the top of amateur golf. You played professionally. You've played fantastic in all these elite level amateur tournaments all over the country. So can you possibly explain how you've managed to stay with one coach for your entire life? And this is just a very unique thing. You just don't hear that very much.
He doesn't try to change what I have. I mean, I don't have the most technically sound swing, but he doesn't change. He's never tried to change me. He just fixes what I got, and I really like that because I understand what he's saying. And I'm not a golf swing guru. I'm probably more of a field player than anything.
Sure.
And he's just fixed little subtle movements, and he'll, just like last year, if I'll be struggling or something, he'll come down and he'll watch me for literally 5 minutes, and he'll go, well, you're doing this, you're sliding, you're opening up too quick. And I'll stop, and he'll go, see, told you. And then he'll go back to doing what he was doing.
So it's just basically just a set of eyes and letting you kind of figure it out for yourself, but also just pointing in the right direction when you need that gentle nudge.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and a lot of my buddies that I play golf with now, some of them caddy for me. And so they watch him tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I'll have them caddy for me, and they'll be able to tell me, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that. And so that's a bit of an advantage too for me. I mean, especially I normally take, besides Coleman and Pine Valley, I always take a buddy with me to caddy. So
nice.
That's probably more mental than anything for me.
So let me ask you, so you finish your collegiate career at Missouri Western, 3-time conference selection, 99 through 2001, and then all districts 3 times. So definitely led that team. The 4 years you're there. Obviously, you have great success in the college level or on the collegiate level. So at some point, you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do with this golf that I've poured myself into in junior golf, high school golf, and college golf? So at some point, I'm assuming you make the decision to turn professional, since I know you are a reinstated amateur. So walk me through the idea of, I've spent my whole life in St. Joe, Missouri, and I'm going to go chase this professional route. How does that come to be, and how do you kind of plot yourself for, or make a plan for success?
After I graduated college, I ended up being the assistant golf professional at the public course here in town. Hence, the head professional was my golf coach, Mike Havermill.
Sure. So this is Fairview, right?
Yeah, Fairview Golf Course here in St. Joe. And I was taking the licks like every beginning assistant pro does, and working a ton of hours and not getting paid very much. And I love being at the golf course, but I love being at the golf course more when I'm playing.
Oh, sure.
And so I played in a couple section events, here in the Midwest section, and played pretty good. And and Mike always let the pros play in our club championship there at Fairview, and I can't remember what I shot. I think I shot like 16 under for 2 rounds, and somebody said, you gotta get out of St. Joe. You gotta go find out if you're any good or not. So that was kind of the gist of it, really. And luckily enough, my aunt lived in Noonan, Georgia, and she had a place for me to stay down there, and so that's a whole nother subject. But it ended up being that way, and it was it's a decision that I'll never regret it. I mean, it was probably a thing that I needed to do, and it was a good time.
Now, when you turn professional, get out of Missouri and head down to, I guess it's Georgia or Florida, where did your kind of journey start as far as playing on a tour?
Well, moved to Noonan, Georgia, and then most of the tournaments were in the panhandle of Florida.
Okay.
Baghdad, Florida area, Pensacola.
Yep.
A little bit in Alabama there on it's be the east side of Alabama. Dothan, Alabama, if I remember that city correctly.
I'm just thinking of a lot of places where you were getting some sort of a hotel room or showing up at some golf course and thinking to yourself, what in the hell am I doing here?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first night, I wasn't too keen on picking the right hotel or the right part of the neighborhood to stay. And then, it's not very often you get a metal key anymore for a hotel. And I got a metal key, and I was like, oh boy, this could be bad.
Yeah, exactly.
It was definitely a wake up call to essentially be out on your own and not knowing what's going to happen from one day to the next. So it was, and once again, I had a buddy that quit his job to go caddy for me. So I did have somebody there with me. So
wow,
seems like I've always had a blanket with me.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got pretty good friends. If you got guys quitting their day job to go caddy on the mini tours, I mean, that's that. But that had to be a hell of a time, because I mean, I'm guessing you're like 22, 23 years old at this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So not to rip off a Band-Aid and expose some old wounds, but, obviously, you're a reinstated amateur, so the professional route didn't pan out. But and then I guess you could always say, well, when you run out of money, you got to go home. So that's a clear indicator that, something, that would be a clear indicator that the professional route isn't working if you can't fund the dream. But do you remember times being, whether it's on the course with competitors or traveling around, when the allure of being a touring professional just didn't seem to capture just didn't seem all it's cracked up to be?
Yeah, we were in a rain delay, and I can't remember. Boy, it's been a while since this happened, but I remember this moment very vividly. It was we were sitting in a rain delay in a restaurant or wherever it was in the clubhouse there, and we're all sitting around tables, and they finally called the tournament for the day. So everyone's getting in their pouch and their bag and taking their stuff out and putting their money clips in their pocket, and everybody's getting their watches out. And I see Bubba and Boo and all them guys. Bubba's hanging out with. They all put on the Rolexes, and I'm looked at my caddy and said, "No, I'll leave my little fossil watch in the bag. We don't need to pull that out."
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so wait a minute. Bubba and Boo, I'm assuming you're talking about Bubba Watson and Boo Weekly. Is that right?
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we can't skip over that. So you're playing mini tour golf with Bubba and Boo Weekly, and they got Rolexes, or where is this happening?
Yeah. They had Rolexes. Trust me, I seen it, and that's when I realized that no, I don't need to pull my little watch out. We'll just keep the wrist naked for a while.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because, when you think of guys like this, obviously, Bubba's won a couple of Masters. Boo Weekly just kind of appeared almost out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then to capture, I believe he won back-to-back Heritage at Hilton Head. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are guys. Did something stick out other than obviously the Rolex watches, but did something stick out even on a mini tour like these guys are destined for something bigger than this, or is it just a bunch of guys in the same boat that one of them's going to break through and it end up being them?
Bubba probably stands out more than anyone. I mean, he hit it so solid every single time. I mean, people don't think he's a great putter, but I didn't see him miss too many when I was down there playing with him.
Yeah.
And to get to where his level is now, and even Boo for that matter, those guys don't miss that many putts. They may think they don't make putts, but they make putts. And it was interesting just to watch what they do and how they got prepared. And I use some of it today, but and I use some of my own stuff. But it's okay to rip some stuff off from those guys. They don't mind. They probably don't remember me anymore.
Hey, my listeners like ripping stuff off all these great guests that I've been having. So share a little bit of this stuff you ripped off. We'll do this secondhand. I mean, what are some of the things that you've pulled out of their game, or some of the things that you've incorporated that's been successful for you? Because, as I said, one of the most successful mid-amateurs in the country. So,
Yeah.
I mean, think back. What are some of the things maybe that you incorporate into your game?
Bubba and I actually became pretty decent friends, and I think it was a mutual thing because we were both lefties.
Of course.
And well, I mean, we played a lot of practice rounds together, and Bubba hit the same shot every time. He always hit a cut, and I started trying to hit a cut one day in practice grounds, and he said, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm trying to hit a cut." He goes, "Why? You hit a draw." I'm like, "Yeah, but I need to hit a cut too." He goes, "No, you don't. If you hit the same shot every time, you'll be just fine." So, I to this day, I still hit a draw, and there's some courses I probably shouldn't hit a draw on, but I don't really, a cut's not my go-to shot. So
yeah,
I just stick with the draw, and we go from there.
Okay. Well, that's a great one. So, I mean, you got to know your strength and know what brought you and stick with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I can't imagine being stuck in a rain delay for 5 hours with Boo Weekly because, I mean, that guy probably. I mean, I actually have a really good Boo Weekly story, which I'll even share real quick. Which probably is so. So Boo Weekly was playing in the Honda Classic this one year down here in South Florida, and a good friend of mine who was actually on this podcast in the first year, Greg O'Mahony, he played mini tour. I believe played European Challenge Tour, but he Monday qualified into the Honda and, missed the cut, but spent a great week down there as his hometown tournament. And he shared this one story, how he's in the locker room and Boo Weekly's just walking around to everyone saying, "Let me get your kicks. Let me get your kicks." And he's collecting shoes to take him over to the locker room attendant to get him. And this is a guy that's won on tour multiple times, going up to anyone and everyone like he's just some like intern in the locker room. "Let me get your kicks. Let me get your kicks."
Yeah, he's there's a guy up here, but we just got a brand new simulator here at our golf course, our country club up here. And the guy that kind of runs the simulator during the day, his name is Kevin Fassbender. He's kind of an on and off caddy. He actually caddied for Rory Sabatini for like 11 or 12 years. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, he's been caddying for Boo off and on, and actually caddied at Pebble Beach last week for Chad Campbell.
Okay.
And but Kevin, first time he caddied for Boo here last year, Kevin knew me obviously, and he asked Boo, and he goes, "Yeah, how's that Nurski doing there?" So Boo's got a little bit of redneck in him. So.
Oh God, really? You think? That's why when you said Boo Weekly's wearing a Rolex, I'm like, look, if you're going to start lying to me on my own podcast, I mean, come on, we got to talk about this. I mean, geez, I mean, is he still wearing all that? Well, he came on when he was always wearing rain pants because I think he was allergic to some sort of a material or something.
I don't know that story, but yeah, he is definitely a different breed. When you're riding your driver down the middle of the fairway in the Ryder Cup, you definitely got something different about you.
Well, that'll never be forgotten. So you get your amateur status back, and obviously you got to get a job. And now we get to the part of the episode where things, gosh, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but things might go off the rails. You see what I did? You see what I did there? See,
yeah, a little pun there. I got you.
Okay, just making sure you're paying attention. So that's a horrible joke, but we're going to go with it anyway. So you come back to St. Joe, and we got to get a job because the pro career, you're not going to be on the PGA Tour. You get your amateur status back, but what is your day job that you got and that you still have to this day?
I got back in town, I was kind of struggling and had a couple buddies that were working construction. They got me into that, and by no means am I a carpenter, so I got out of that. So my best friend, and we played high school golf together all the time, and basketball in high school, and he worked for the railroad, BNSF, and his dad worked there for 30 plus years, and he goes, well, we can try to get you on here, and and lo and behold, I got a job at BNSF, and I've been there for 17 years now.
So when I think of someone working for the railroad, and this is terrible of me being just some city slicker down here in South Florida, just surrounded by, just basically palm trees and beaches. So explain to me exactly, other than me just getting frustrated when I get stuck at a railroad crossing or the tri-rail, what am I missing? Like, what's your job at the railroad?
I'm a conductor, a certified conductor. When they hire you, you go through a 13-week training program that essentially covers every single thing that the railroad can throw at you, except there's few situations that they just can't cover. But
sure.
So 13 weeks, and when I first started out, I would work in Kansas City, Missouri, and I would be on call 24/7, and that's kind of how it starts out for any new hire that gets a job there, and so on and so forth. And once you get a little time in, then you can catch a train. You'll take it from Kansas City to Lincoln, Nebraska, and then you'll catch one and come back and just keep doing that, and then but now thankfully I have a little seniority under my belt. I get to work from home every day, go in at 6:30, and I'm off by 2:30, and I get to be home every day to see my family. And so my official title as we speak right now is a switchman. So we just essentially just take cars to industries around St. Joe, Missouri, and we build trains that go from St. Joe all the way to either Eagle Pass or some place down in Mexico. They take soybean meal down there.
Wow. Okay, we are learning all sorts of things on this episode. So Boo Weekly wears a Rolex, and now I know a little bit more about the railroad. So I'm imagining that this job not only gives you time to spend with your family, but it also gives you time to keep your game pretty sharp.
Yeah, once I got some seniority under my belt, it's definitely offered me the chance to practice as much as I can, and my wife is really understanding about it, especially now that my oldest son is really taking it up.
Okay, so you have this time to spend on your game. Obviously, that's great. But you also have a family. Have other responsibilities, I would assume. So you probably can't be out there for 5 hours and just beating balls all night long. So for people that are trying to do the same thing that you're doing, balancing the day job, balancing family life, what is maybe a routine or a go-to practice session that you have used that's been successful that you can get the most out of it in the quickest amount of time?
For me, most of my time is spent around the chipping green and the putting green. Because you don't get to practice that on the golf course. To me, you can't. You're focusing on making everything on the golf course, but when you get on the putting and chipping green, that's where you get your routine down and practice different lies, and so that way, once you get on the golf course, you're not surprised when you get a bad one.
Well, your success in amateur golf, as I've kind of alluded to, I'm going to try and embarrass you a little bit. 3 Missouri State Amateur Championships. You got a Mid-Amateur Championship. You played in numerous USGA events, 4-ball state team. You were the runner-up of the U.S. Mid-Am in 2014 to Scott Harvey, who was a previous guest on the podcast. So you have all the credentials. Was there maybe a turning point when maybe you kind of realize, okay, this is my game? Getting all this success on the state level, was there maybe a turning point where you kind of figured your own game out? Maybe figured, okay, here's how I get the most out of what I have. You just mentioned earlier, I hit a draw, so I'm sticking with that. But was there a time where it kind of clicked for you? Because you went on this great run, it seems, for the last decade, so to speak, with the amateurs and. Tell me about maybe when things might have clicked, if you can pinpoint anything.
I would say probably 2010 when I won Missouri Amateur, and just so happens I beat Skip in the semifinals, and Skip will say that he had other things on his mind. He was moving his house and moving to a different part of St. Louis, but to me, Skip was king in Missouri, and you always want to take the opportunity when you have the chance to knock off the king and you want to win. And I ended up beating Skip, and then I made a pretty big comeback in the finals. And so beating Skip and then making a good comeback in the finals to win your first one, I think is something you always kind of lean on, and you kind of fall back and say, hey, when you're down, you can come back, or, you can beat somebody that's really good. So I kind of try to remember that when I'm out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so this is Skip Berkmeyer that you're speaking of. This is, like you said, I would imagine that him and Tom, Missouri, Tom Watson, and obviously Jim Holtgreave, these are guys that really at the top of, amateur golf in the state of Missouri. Do you remember, when was the first time you met Skip Berkmeyer?
Oh, boy. Skip was... Skip's a few years older than me.
What, about 15, 30 years? He's a bit like in his 60s now, right?
Yeah, he's damn near on senior tour. So
yeah.
It would be Skip. Probably met 07 or 08. I think I played Skip in either the 2007 or 8 Missouri Hieronymus Cup matches, which is kind of a East-West thing. Interstate battle, and I think I was 1 under after 13, and he closed me out, and I'm like, damn, he's pretty good. I got to get better.
So you meet Skip, and you have that first encounter. I think it's interesting when you get to that level, and then you still always have to try and improve. So like, you can't just whether you win the Missouri Amateur or your club championship or whatever you win, that's great, but then you have to keep improving, because that's what everyone else is trying to do. So, how did you continuously improve, and what are you trying to do still to continuously improve your game?
Yeah, and Skip probably gets a little credit for me improving. And I like I was talking earlier, I still hit a draw, but I used to hit a big old hook.
Okay.
And Skip said, you want to get better, we got to tone down the hook, make it a draw, not a hook.
Right.
So I really worked on trying to take a lot of the hook out of it, and I think equipment in the ball really helps you take some of that out. And that's a discussion for another day. I think getting the hook out was very, very helpful for me. And to be honest with you, I really, really worked hard on my game around the green to, sometimes I'm probably not the best ball striker in the world, but I can get up and down quite a few times.
There you go. Nice. Well, you teamed up with Berkmeyer to play U.S. 4-ball matches, and you played U.S. state team several times, so you've spent quite a bit of time with him. I would never try and assist you in maybe needling him or throwing him under the bus at all. I'm not going to press you to do that, but if you wanted to tell a good Skip Berkmeyer story, I'm sure you had one that I would just graciously allow here on this forum. I mean, I would do that.
Oh yeah,
I would do that for you, Brad.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, how many do you want?
I mean,
all 50 of them, or you just want one good one?
I mean, I have plenty of recording space on the hard drive. Just got a new one, so we have at least 9 or 10 hours worth of space for you to just unload all that you want to. But I'll let you make that decision.
One of the best ones is he has got to be the worst rental car renter of all time.
Oh, this is great. I love this.
Yeah. We were in Birmingham a few years back, gets a flat tire, and he looked at me. He goes, "What do I do now?" I'm like, "Skip, what do you mean? What do I do? What do you do now? You got to change a flat tire." He goes, "Well, I don't know how to do that."
Oh.
I said, "What do you mean you don't know how to change a flat tire?" He goes, "I don't know how to change a flat tire." I said, "Oh boy." I said, "Skip, when we get to Alan's house," we were going to Alan Koshat's to have dinner.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "When we get there, I'll show you how to change a flat tire." He goes, "No, can you just do it for me?" I'm like, "No, you need to learn. You're a 40-year-old man. You need to learn how to change a flat tire."
This is a Midwest guy that doesn't know how to. I mean, I know how to change a flat tire, and I'm a city boy. I mean, I'm a Floridian. I mean, that's bad enough, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So
well, Skip. Yeah, so we get there, and Skip parks the car in the wrong spot to change the tire. So Skip, you got to turn around and do all this other stuff. And it just so happens that Alan Koshat's there and Patrick Kristovich is there.
Oh gosh, Kristovich is there?
Yeah. Oh, Kristovich was there. I mean, he's got pictures and Skip. Oh boy, it's Skip has still probably not heard the end of it for that one. And I think it was a year later, we were headed over to Koshat's house, and he got in a wreck in the rental car, and Alan's neighbor had to come out and take the dent out of a bumper for Skip because he didn't know what to do about that. Skip got in a wreck at LA with a rental car. Skip was down in Florida last weekend, lost the keys to his rental car and had to have it towed away and get a new one. So yeah, he is definitely a black cat when it comes to rental cars.
Wow, I'm not traveling with this guy. Yeah, but you still keep him around. That's pretty decent of you.
Yeah, he's been pretty good to me, and I'm pretty grateful.
Yeah. What about Holtgreave? When's the first time you met Jamie Holtgreave?
Oh boy, he was probably very instrumental in helping me get into the Crump Cup. That's when I met him. Probably a year or two before I got. So probably 2012 or 13, and that was via Skip as well. Mr. Holtgreave is, boy, he is one of a kind.
Yes, he is.
He's pretty intense, but once you get to know him, and he definitely will give you the needle if you deserve it, and he's not shy about it.
Well, I've met him. He's been on the podcast. Great guy. I actually met him at Pine Valley, and and I'm just thinking, of all the times that someone can give someone the needle, how about just some guy from St. Joe's playing at the Pine Valley for the first time with the Crump Cup? I mean, there had to have been some rookie hazing, or if there wasn't, at least you can share some story about stepping foot into that place for the first time, surrounded by just all these great mid-amateurs. It's your first time. I don't think I've actually asked someone about their first trip to Pine Valley to play in the Crump Cup, but I'm sure you can probably remember just about every hole.
I don't think I've ever been that nervous stepping on the first tee. You don't feel it in the practice round because you're just playing golf in the practice round with your buddies, and the first hole is unbelievably hard at Pine Valley, and
yep.
I can't remember what I made, probably bogey, but it just so happened I got rid of the jitter somehow and was medalist my first year out there. So once you make the top 16 of the Crumb Cup, everybody's really, really good. And I got waxed by Patrick Carter from West Virginia. I ended up staying the whole time to get the full experience and playing in the they have a little alternate shot deal there the last day. And I think I played with Geronimo Esteve.
Yes.
From Puerto Rico. And that was fun. We had a good time. And that's what that golf tournament's good for. You get to meet people and you get to see people that you don't normally get to see. The Mid-Am thing is it's a pretty tight-knit group, and we have a bunch of good guys out there.
Well, it's funny, you're bringing something up I actually was going to ask you about. You've it's one of those things that's so great about this game, especially the amateur side, is the camaraderie. You've won all these championships and gotten to play these great courses all around the country, whether it be down here at Seminole for the Coleman or the Crumb Cup at Pine Valley. But I'm guessing the relationships that you're building is something that goes far beyond just any trophies or any sort of a souvenir you get from playing these courses. I know this is gonna be a tough one, but if you got to go on a golf trip, like a overseas golf trip to St. Andrews or something, and you got to put a foursome together. I mean, barring any sort of you can't exclude Skip, because I'm going to get you guys a van, so that way you don't have to worry about anyone driving. But so who do you take on that trip, and where do you go?
Are we counting Skip or not counting Skip?
You can bring Skip; it's fine.
Oh, right. Well, definitely Skip. Oh man, this is gonna be. Somebody's going to get mad at me.
That's the whole point of this question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I would say Skip, Alan Koshat, and oh boy, probably Todd Mitchell.
There you go.
So, yeah, Todd's we're all kind of like Midwestern guys, and Todd's a great athlete, and his swing is just good to watch, period. So I think we'd have a good time doing something like that, and it would be fun to see Skip try to drive over there.
That's wrong side of the road. You guys are you guys aren't coming back
for a loop. Mm-hmm.
You guys aren't coming back.
Yeah, he would be bad for Skip over there.
All right, let me see if I can get you in a little bit more trouble. The distance report just came out by the USGA, and I know that is a really hotly contested topic around. I mean, everyone has an opinion, I think, or a lot of people have opinions, and I've spoken to people that are close to the PGA Tour or close to players in the PGA Tour, and they obviously don't want to see anything go away. And I don't think as far as distance goes, and I don't think the manufacturers of golf balls and golf equipment want to have any restrictions on what they're able to do. Is it something that really affects you? I mean, you're in your early 40s and you're playing Mid-Am. For the most part, I'm assuming you're playing Mid-Am golf. I don't think you're playing 74 and 7,500 yard golf courses. So, is it something that is really something that you feel strongly about, or is it just whatever happens?
If they roll the ball back, or they take something away from the clubs, I in my opinion, I just don't agree with it. I mean, nobody wants to go watch somebody putt. Everyone wants to go watch the big boys hit the driver.
Yeah.
They want to see it go a long ways. Who cares if they're making a bunch of birdies and hitting it out of the rough? I mean, I think I seen Webb Simpson say something the other day about, if you want to make it harder, don't make the fairway so wide and make the rough taller. I mean,
yeah,
that's, if you're 80 yards out and you got 5 or 6 inch rough, you're not going to be able to stop the ball regardless of where you're at. So, especially in a USGA event. I mean, USGA events like landing on the street. I mean, the greens are rock hard.
Well, and actually, I've always kind of thought that, like, you look at some of these shorter courses, and there's, if you put a wedge in anyone's hand, it doesn't matter how far the ball goes. These guys are so good from 125 yards and in, and they putt so good, and also the greens are so pure that there's going to be low scores. So. Yeah, it's an interesting topic. Is it something that you found yourself talking to other Mid-Ams about, or is it still a little too new?
I think it's probably a little too new for me yet. We're kind of isolated up here in St. Joe and the snow, but I'm sure it'll be a hot topic when we go to Champions Club and we go down to the Coleman, and I'll get to see everybody and we'll talk about it. And kind of the ringleader's Mr. Harvey. So I'm sure he'll have a pretty good insight for us to talk about.
I did not ask you about the 2014 U.S. Mid-Am, and I really don't want to go down. I mean, obviously, you and Scott Harvey were the co-medalists, and then you meet in the final. But you also run into him, I would imagine, every single year since playing in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
So, what is that dynamic like? Where, it's one thing if you see your local buddy that beats you out in the club championship or something like that. But he beat you out in the tournament that took him to the Masters. So how do you manage that with keeping a relationship with the guy? And is it just something that just kind of evaporates over time, or is that just always there?
I've never had hard feelings about it. I mean, he played better that day, and he deserved to win. And and I think being in that match with him, it created another friendship to me. And we've always talked, and we've sat down a few times and talked about the match. And he's even said himself that he thinks he counted 5 or 6 putts that lipped out on me that could have went in, it didn't. But and that's the way it goes. And I was okay with it. He was a very gracious winner, and to this day we always talk, and we'll send each other some notes back and forth on Twitter or whatever the case may be. And it's just great to have another friend like that to discuss big time mid-amateur stuff, and hopefully we'll get to discuss this new East-West matches he's coming out with.
Yeah, that's going to be at Merrido. That looks really interesting. I want to finish off on one thing is, kind of tying it back to St. Joe. I think it really kind of exemplifies just, your kind of entire journey in the game. And you mentioned learning the game at Fairview, which is a, public course. It's a muni course. And I believe it probably tips out at what, like 6,300?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
They might have put a couple par 3 tees in there that make it 64.
Okay.
Max.
So this is the place where you learn the game, and then you recently, just a couple of years ago, get inducted into their Hall of Fame. I think there's just probably a couple dozen that are in that Hall of Fame. I try to stay away from the question of how did that feel? Normally, because it's me asking you that about winning a tournament, and of course, obviously winning a tournament, that feels great. But when you look back at where you started, and then you're getting inducted into the Hall of Fame of the course where you learned the game on, I mean, that day had to have been pretty special.
It was. There was a lot of people there for the ceremony, and I got a little choked up. My family, my in-laws, my mom and dad, and my kids were there. And just to see your kids start to want to play golf, and then you get to kind of throw back to where you all started. And it was kind of a surreal moment, really. And we got to take pictures with some of the older guys that were there before me, and I wanted pictures with all of them, and I was slowing everything down because I wanted all the pictures.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my teacher and coach was there, and he introduced me with the speech and everything. So it was a really special evening, and then they have a little 9-hole shootout after that, and I end up winning that too. So it was kind of a capper for the night, and somebody took an awesome picture of, I think it was my son would have been 5 then. He wanted to walk down the first fairway with me, and they got a picture of us holding hands walking down the fairway. So that I got that picture hanging in my basement here, and that was a pretty special deal.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I know you're prepping for the 4-ball in Houston. And then I know that you are going to be down this neck of the woods playing in the Coleman in April, and then obviously a great summer schedule that you're probably gearing up for. Best of luck to you throughout the summer, and glad we're able to catch up, and thanks for coming by the back of the range.
No problem. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Brad Nurski for joining me this week here at the back of the range. Don't forget, lots of new episodes. We have the Road to Augusta series starting next week. We're going to have tons of other episodes. So make sure you're following along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Everything you need. Every episode is available at thebackoftherange.com. We'll see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.